Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Beatdowns with the Boz. Today I have for you a version of the Mardu vehicles deck that won the most recent Pro Tour. This deck is lean, fast, and aggressive. We have a full 12 1-drops to kick off our curve. Toolcraft Exemplar does a good Wild Nacatl impression. The artifact theme is really strong in this deck. Toolcraft Exemplar is usually going to be attacking for 3. Inventor's Apprentice is not completely different than Curdape, another good zoo-like creature that we've seen in the past. And then Thraben Inspector, while not being a particularly big body, it does a lot of good work simply because it makes a clue, which is an artifact. Then we have probably the most powerful card in Standard, Heart of Kiran. Pretty interesting that they banned Smuggler's Copter and then printed Heart of Kiran, but I guess that's just the way the print runs work. And until WotC decides to do something about this card, I would expect to play 4 of it because this card is just insane. Veteran Motorist is particularly good in this deck. It's a great card, but it also, while just synergizing with the vehicles, it helps make it so that your Heart of Kiran beats their Heart of Kiran, which is pretty important. Scrapheap Scrounger, a really good recurring creature. 3 power in particular is a little bit of a sweet spot for turning on Heart of Kiran. So we've got Toolcraft Exemplar, Veteran Motorist, which I just covered, Scrapheap Scrounger, and then also we've got a little bit more to turn on Heart of Kiran. But Scrapheap Scrounger does a lot of good work in that it's just a good aggressive creature. It's an artifact, and we can keep bringing it back from the graveyard. So it ends up doing a lot of good work in this deck. Aethersphere Harvester helps us win races, and flying is just a really good keyword to have on your creatures in an aggressive deck, because when the ground gets clogged up, Aethersphere Harvester is going to be able to push through. Thalia is another great racing card. 3 power, so it turns on Heart of Kiran. First strike, so it does pretty good in combat. It dies to a lot of removal spells, which isn't particularly exciting, but the fact that it keeps you safe from the Saheeli combo, in addition to making it so that something like Ishkana, which would be a huge roadblock, comes a turn later, makes Thalia pull a lot of weight in this deck. Then we have probably the best removal spell in Standard. Well, definitely the best removal spell in Standard, but arguably, one of the more powerful removal spells we've seen in a long time, Unlicensed Disintegration. Being able to kill your opponent's guy and deal 3 damage, extremely relevant, especially when there's a lot of Planeswalkers running around. You'll frequently see people, play a Gideon, -1 it to crew their Heart of Kiran, and you may be able to use Unlicensed Disintegration to kill their Heart and their Gideon. So that 3 damage that Unlicensed Disintegration does, sometimes this card can end up being a 2-for-1. And then I also have 2 Declaration in Stones. There's a lot of big creatures running around Standard right now. The fact that this is sorcery means it doesn't hit vehicles like Heart of Kiran, which is a problem. But if someone's going to be playing in Ishkana or is looking to get into a board stall, maybe they play an Ulamog, something ridiculous like that. Declaration in Stone is just kind of a catch-all. And in a deck like this, where you're beating down so quickly, there's a good chance that even though you're giving them a clue, they're not really going to have time to make good use of it. So we've got all these great curves, great cards, really lean and vicious in terms of the curve. And then to top it off, we've got Gideon. Gideon, arguably one of the best cards in Standard, aside from Heart of Kiran. It plays quite nicely with Heart of Kiran. Heart of Kiran, you can crew it for 3, but you can also remove a loyalty counter from a Planeswalker. So being able to play Gideon, -1 it to crew your Heart of Kiran, and then making a creature that can block, and potentially being able to attack with Heart of Kiran and minusing your Gideon to block with Heart of Kiran also, makes playing a Gideon just a really powerful play, particularly if you have Heart of Kiran, but even by itself, Gideon's going to be great. It's mostly a 2-color deck. The only black card is Unlicensed Disintegration and 1 Fatal Push in the sideboard. So if you look at our mana base, it's mostly red-white. We only have a few Concealed Courtyards to tap for black, also these Spire of Industries, and then 2 Aether Hubs. So we're actually a little shy on black mana sources, but we only have 1 card, and we don't, Unlicensed Disintegration is going to be the card that, it's almost like a curve topper in this deck. So we want to play our creatures and then play our removal spells. So We should just barely have enough black mana for this unlicensed integration. In the sideboard, we've got some extra removal spells. Release the Gremlins, particularly good against other Mardu decks. Selfless Spirit for when we need to fight sweepers. Cultivator's Caravan for when we're going a little bit bigger. Pia Nalaar and Gideon in case we need a little bit more threat density and aggressive potential. And if we are going big in a defensive way, 2 Chandras, a Skysovereign, and a Needle Spires are going to make it so that we can make our deck a lot more mid-rangey. This is really, really close to what won the Pro Tour. The only changes I made were I changed the Thalias to Pias and added Inventor's Apprentice, mainly because I just wanted to beat down a little bit more quickly. This format's speeding up, and even though this is probably the fastest deck in the format, its edge is in its speed. So as other decks get faster, this deck needs to continue to get faster also. And the one other change that's notable is these 2 Declaration Stones. The Pro Tour list had Shock, which is a pretty decent card, but against the green-black mid-range decks and whatnot, Shock just doesn't cut it. It basically does nothing. So Declaration of Stone is going to pull a bit more weight there. And I cleaned up the mana base a little bit. There was a Foreboding Ruins and a whatever the other black-red dual land was, were in place of basic mountains. So there were 2 more black sources originally in the Pro Tour winning list. I'm pretty sure we can get away with this. But the untapped mana has had a premium in this deck. Speed really matters. So that's that. Now, without further ado, we'll play some games.